Okay, again, I'm Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I'm a member of Congress. I represent Florida's 25th Congressional District, South Broward, a little bit of North Broward, the port and the seaport. What we saw, the conditions that we saw inside this internment camp, which it is nothing less than that description, were really appalling. I'll walk you through just a few of the really egregious, disturbing, disgusting conditions. First of all, I want to talk about the establishment of this facility and make it very clear that we were directly told that the state was asked by the Department of Homeland Security to create a facility to detain ICE detainees. The governor decided directly, the governor directed FDEM, the Florida Division of Emergency Management, to put that facility they were requested to create by DHS here. Could have put it anywhere. They decided to put it in the middle of the most brutal conditions in the middle of a swamp in the Everglades. Let's be clear, throughout this entire tour, it was repeated over and over that the state is working hand in glove with ICE. This facility was inspected by ICE. They review their detention standards. They are using cages. These detainees are living in cages. The pictures that you've seen don't do it justice. They are essentially packed into cages, wall-to-wall humans, 32 detainees per cage. That is the only thing inside those cages are their bunk beds, and there are 3 tiny toilets that are toilet units that have a sink attached to it. So they essentially drink, they get their drinking water and they brush their teeth where they poop in the same unit. They bragged that they went above standards, supposedly, and gave them a 3-foot privacy wall that stretches the length inside the 32 detainee cage. A 3-foot privacy wall that stretches the length of the 3 toilets in a row. The showers provide no privacy at all. There are no curtains on it. It's a big open shower unit. There are, small walls in each shower, but we're talking about all 900 men who are held in this facility. It is built currently for 1,000, and they have no privacy at all when they're showering. For meals, when we walked through the quote unquote meal prep area, the kitchen area for lack of a better term, they had the portions that were available for detainees, and they had the portions that were available for employees being prepared at the same time. The portions available for employees, large pieces of roast chicken, large sausages, and the detainees' lunches were a small, gray turkey and cheese sandwich, an apple, and chips, and that's it. We're talking about fully grown men being fed very small portions. When many asked, about the nutrition standards, they say that they are utilizing state prison standards that have been approved by ICE. But when I went to Chrome on an unannounced visit, and I spent 3.5 hours walking through Chrome, went to every nook and cranny of Chrome, went in the kitchen, saw the meals being prepared. The meals being prepared for Chrome detainees were like the size, the portion and nutrition level, roast chicken, rice, beans, the size and portion levels and nutrition level that the employees get here. And they are I don't see how a large grown man at that, and there are many large grown men in this facility, I don't see how that could possibly sustain them nutritionally or not make them hungry. And when you have hungry people, obviously their mood changes. I brought a thermostat in with me, a manual thermostat. In the medical intake area, it was 85 degrees. This is inside the so-called air-conditioned tent. in the area. They only let us go up to the entranceway of where they were housing the detainees. They would not let us even a step past the threshold. It was 83 degrees. That was without being all the way in with all of the bodies that were living inside that. The last thing I want to mention is environmentally. They have dug out reclaimed environmental areas and dumped fill on top of them. They say that that means that they have not put fill anywhere that wasn't, quote, already developed. But these are, since the 1970s, reclaimed environmental areas, and we have, obviously, Everglades restoration funding coming through here. We could not meet with any detainees. They gave us no specific reason or authority why we couldn't. They refused us access and wouldn't even let us go into the dormitory where they were being encaged. So this is an appalling, outrageous environment to detain anyone. And lastly, they say that there are only people who are in the final stages of deportation here. We have doubts about that. We've heard that there are detainees here who are not criminals, but we're going to need to ask a lot of follow-up questions. So thank you so much. I'll turn it over to Congressman Soto.
What we saw in our inspection today was a political stunt. Dangerous and wasteful. Evidence of flooding, floors that are only about 8 inches above the ground, temperatures that are hot, and you see the isolation here. Also wasteful. It probably cost double the amount to put this facility here versus right by Chrome. Which begs the question, why are they spending all this money for this? The director answered that he was not given a single reason why they chose this location. Not by the governor, not by the county. And water has to be trucked into this facility. No running pipes. It makes no sense that this is here. And no ICE detainees have even been deported yet from this facility. We're in day 10. They have to be deported within 14 days. And so one can't help but understand and conclude that this is a total cruel political stunt meant to have a spectacle of political theater, and it's wasting taxpayer dollars and putting our ICE agents, our troops, and ICE detainees in jeopardy. En español, este es una chiste cruel, una situación muy peligrosa aquí en este cárcel. Hay una inundación, es mucho calor, y ellos están usando dinero en una manera terrible. Ellos pueden tener una facilidad menos gastos en el próximo área de Chrome aquí. No hay agua. Quien puede estar ahí necesita transportar esta agua y no hay deportaciones ya. La única razón por esta facilidad es para tener una chiste cruel por la comunidad hispana. And next we'll hear from Maxwell Alejandro Frost, my colleague from Orlando.
Thank you, everybody. What we saw in there is very simple. We saw humans being held in cages. You heard it from Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. 32 people per cage. 3 toilets in each cage for these 32 people, and their drinking water comes from the toilet. People are on the toilet, you can't drink water. What we also heard, there was so much ambiguity on under what authority people are being held here, and whether this is a state facility or a federal facility. They kept state legislators out, trying to claim it's a federal facility. Then perhaps they would try to keep us out today if we came unannounced, saying it's a state facility. And what we heard very clear is ICE is giving them the directions from A to Z, where they put the beds, how everything is meant to be. So this is much like Baker in North Florida, where you have the state running this facility, but ICE is calling the shots. It is a federal detention facility, which means, and I'm really glad we were able to get this ironed out here, it means members of Congress are able to come here unannounced.
That's right.
And we will come here unannounced. Because, of course, like I said earlier today, a clean cage is still a cage.
That's right.
And they couldn't even keep this clean. I'll tell you, we couldn't even see the actual toilets that the detainees are using. Some of the biggest complaints we've heard is, yes, there's 3 toilets, but a lot of the time, only one is working. And they get backed up, feces being spread everywhere. And I asked them, I want to come in and I want to see the toilets. They said, we'll show you the toilets of a new unit that no one's in yet. That's not what I wanted to see. We wanted to see how it is right now, and we were unallowed to do it. Which means even with this invitation, so much was kept from us. We weren't able to see the medical facilities. They cited HIPAA, saying because of HIPAA you can't see the medical facilities. Bullshit. We have done multiple ICE detention unannounced visits and been able to see the medical units. And why seeing the medical units are important is, of course, we want to know that the standard is high in case someone is having an issue. But also in many of these facilities, the segregation units and the isolation units are often the same units used for medical as well. We were unable to see those. Not just that, I also want to make sure I say this. There are so many attorneys across the country and across the state who have no idea how they can set up the appointments with the people that they're representing. I was given an email. It is legal@privacy6.com. They say if you email that, you'll be able to come here and see the person you're representing. That's what I was told by one of the head folks here. So again, that is legal@privacy6.com. Two other quick things. The other thing I want to bring up is this place is loaded with third-party private security officers. This is not completely being run by federal agents or federal officers, not even state folks. Most of them are around the perimeter. When we went inside of the cage area, it was mainly private security company folks. Not any different than you'd find if you went to a concert or you went to a sporting game. The last thing I want to say is every Floridian should be ashamed that our taxpayer money is being used to put people in these cages. Right. That our taxpayer money is being used as we're coming into hurricane season. It's being used for this. As we have homeless people sleeping on the streets, as rent is so damn high in this country, it's being used for that. And to what Ron DeSantis said when he said, oh, I've never seen Democrats fight hard for people in the United States, they fight harder for immigrants or this and that. Number one, immigrants don't poison the blood of this nation. They are the blood of this nation. The other thing I'll say is don't lecture us on fighting on behalf of our constituents and Americans when you applauded a bill that just got passed that'll rip away the health care of 2 million Floridians. Right. Don't lecture us when you were going on and saying you love a bill that's going to rip the food out of the mouths of children, that's going to give $150 billion to ICE to go to our communities, terrorize our people, throw them in cages, never to be seen again. It is something everyone, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or anything, should be deeply ashamed of. The work is not done here. We came here to do this, but we will be back. Thank you.
Can you speak in Spanish, please?
Rather than me just say the same thing my colleagues have just said, I associate myself with their comments. Why don't we just go to questions since it's about to pour?
I have a question for you, Representative Moskowitz.
Yeah.
What does the DEM being in charge of this, like, what does that do to the legal implications of Alligator Alcatraz? Like, how do you, the state has said that it's not a correctional institution, so how does that work?
So I don't know the legalities of that, but what I can tell you is the way this happened is when the governor declares an emergency, which he did, the director of emergency management becomes the state coordinating officer. Okay. Under that authority, they have all the powers of the governor. They can also spend up to $500 million without going back to the legislature. So Kevin Guthrie, who's the director, works directly for the government, for the governor. The Department of Emergency Management is within the governor's office. So he is taking his instructions from the governor, and he has fulfilled those instructions.
But I will add that the executive director of FDEM did say that FDEM does not have the 287G authority to, that is, they are not designated to manage this facility on behalf of the federal government. And it is, we were not able to get clarity on whose 287G authority this facility is being run.
And just to add to that too, the director referred to those being detained as inmates. Sure. Representative Anavias Kamani from the Orlando area, State House Rep. So different terminology was used to describe those who are being detained right now. So staff referred to them as residents. They wouldn't use the term inmate or detainee, but then the director multiple times referred to folks as inmates and detainees. So there continues to be, to Congressman Frost's point, just vagueness of what this operation actually is, who's in charge, and
referring to prison standards.
Yes, they kept referring to prison standards as well. Every time we asked a question about the environment, they said These
Federal
are
and
federal,
and
state prison standards. Federal and state prison standards. So it's like, okay, is this a correctional institution? There are FDC staff also working here. It's worth noting that there were staff from the Florida Department of Corrections here.
I think it really needs to be made clear that this facility exists just for purposes of it being a stunt.
Right.
This is for show. This is DeSantis and Trump chest beating and Utmeyer chest beating to try to make sure that they can send a message that they are the biggest, baddest, nastiest overseers. Because that's what's going on here. This harkens back to when you had people who were encaged, who were imprisoned. I mean, I just think it's important to underscore, when I have been through other ICE facilities, the detainees are not in cages. And there is a temporary structure on the grounds of Chrome Detention Center that I just went to see. And they told me that the reason they're in cages is because it's a temporary facility. But there's a temporary tent on the grounds of Chrome, and those detainees are not in a cage. They freely walk around. Their beds are out in the open. They're able to move back and forth between buildings. They are full of it.
Just one other thing I want to say too, that I think is really important to paint this picture. When they let us in to see the cages, and we saw people, of course, yelling for help. We even heard in the background someone yell, "I'm an American citizen." They started chanting libertad, freedom, liberty. And I gotta tell you, it was very emotional to be there for all of us, to hear that, and to see that our taxpayer money is being used for this stunt. We asked them about a hurricane plan. Of course, the plan is to get people out, and they know that and it doesn't even have to be a hurricane, the first real storm that comes by here, all that money that's been used to build this will completely go to waste. So this has nothing to do with what they tell you it is, and it's all a cruel stunt. Cruelty isn't just the point, it's the strategy in this.
They plan to evacuate them even for Cap 1?
Earlier this week that people are going to call this a modern day concentration camp. Would you agree with that statement?
Listen, it is as bad as it can be, but it is not a concentration camp. And people should not use Holocaust references to describe what's going on behind us.
And did you guys notice the bug infestation at all?
Well, you're noticing it. It is no different in there.
And there were bugs when we went into the empty dorm that has not yet been finished. There were bugs on the mattresses, all over the mattresses that had not even yet been used in an air-conditioned tent. So I mean, there's also, when we walked through, there were the largest grasshoppers I've ever seen in my life. They were the largest grasshoppers I've ever seen in my life, hopping along around this facility. I mean, this is literally plopped down in the middle of a swamp. I also, since we were able to hear some of the people screaming, another man screamed out that he was poisoned by Clorox in the water, and he was in the hospital for 4 days. Now, we were told that there was no one who was ever hospitalized overnight. So maybe he was referring to the medical clinic here, but I mean, there are really disturbing, vile conditions, and this place needs to be shut the hell down.
Yep.
It needs to be shut down. They want to open up look. If they open up a different facility in a more appropriate place, like if they opened up at Homestead Airport, where they could establish much more habitable conditions, that's a different story. This place is a stunt, and they're abusing human beings here, and it's an outrage.
Can I make really quick? And I just want to debunk one thing. My colleagues, and I think for our federal partners, but this idea that the worst of the worst is inside the facility is not true. They are separating them based off of wristbands, based off of orange, yellow, and red. And individuals with small infractions are inside this facility. Civil traffic infractions, suspended license are in there. So the idea that the worst of the worst is in there is not true.
So adding to that point, I'll just add, the only people we saw there were Hispanic looking males. That's all we saw there. All Hispanic-looking adult males, including those with no criminal infractions at the lowest level. There was one person who was on medical isolation. We couldn't get details about that. I was trying to figure out if it's a public health emergency or a public health concern that puts them in isolation, and we don't know how many people have been put in medical isolation to this point.
State Senator Blazer Godley just came out before you guys and said that conditions were fine, the beds were comfortable, the food was great, painted a very rosy picture. Your response to that?
Unfortunately, my colleagues, that's because they take this as a game, and that's how they have been operating in there, right? So what we just saw is not a game, especially as the congressman just made mention of, that while we were in there, at one point it was clocked at about 81 degrees in a particular spot. And I know for a fact if you continue to go in, it is even hotter.
Right. It was 83.
83 degrees.
Yes.
83 degrees.
And just to read a statement from the wife of a detainee regarding this scheduled tour from his pastor to me yesterday. His wife says they allowed them to take a shower and gave them new clothes, and the food all of a sudden is better. I wonder how long that's going to last after your visit.
And also I want to point out that I don't really want to debate the conditions. My name is Representative Rita Harris, House District 44. We don't need to debate the conditions. The fact is there are people there that most likely do not belong there, and that is enough. Thank you.
Make sure you tell me your name.
Okay, any other questions?
They said they would evacuate for a hurricane, even a Category 1, any hurricane.
Yeah, I'll answer that. So that decision will be made by obviously the Director of Emergency Management when to pull that trigger. But he said that there were evacuation plans in place, and most likely what they would do is they would get the people out. They would decompress this facility and then move them to facilities they've already transferred them out of to bring them here.
Like the county jail.
He better have a lot of time.
Okay, last question. One last one.
How long was your tour?
Yeah. The question about hearings, as a member of the House Oversight Committee, I can tell you after this, I have many phone calls planned with my colleagues that talk about possibly coming down here, possibly holding ad hoc hearings about this facility, and not just facility. This is indicative of a greater problem too across this country. The dehumanizing immigrants, dehumanizing people who are in this country, people who've been in this country, many of whom over a decade, people like my mother who came here as a refugee from Cuba. You know, when I was in that facility looking at those cages, I saw young men who looked exactly like me. I saw myself in those cages. And so there will be hearings and there will be accountability on this at the federal level, and of course I know our state partners are going to work on it as well.
The difference in the impression between the Republican legislators and ours tells you all you need to know about the difference in the regard for human life and human beings between people who elect Democrats and people who elect Republicans. We all here clearly ran for different reasons than our friends on the other side of the aisle. We ran to help make people's lives better, and they ran to serve their MAGA master and remain in power. And you know, like every single day, I know we all will continue to fight to make all humans' lives better, and that's what our fight against these kinds of conditions in detention facilities are all about. I'll say just lastly, I think every single one of us here would agree that if you are a criminal and you're an undocumented immigrant,
that's right,
you should be deported.
That's right.
Criminals should not be able to remain as long as they have due process, and they've been detained under our laws. Criminals don't belong in this country, but the problem is yes, with due process, exactly. But that's not occurring here, and the rule of law has to be followed, and that's the difference between the impression you were given by the Republican legislators who walked up to this podium before we got here and ours. Thank you all very much.